Welcome to the Hired Geek Podcast, where each week we explore the impact of EdTech on the student experience with engaging, fun, and relevant conversations that honor the wide range of work happening all across the higher ed ecosystem. I'm your host, Dustin Ramsdell. I've been working in and around higher ed for the past decade, focused on student support and digital experiences. Join me every week for discussions with some of the best minds in education technology. The Hired Geek Podcast is a part of the Enrollify podcast network, a robust collection of shows designed to help higher education professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes below. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com. Welcome back, everybody, for another super special episode of the Hired Geek Podcast. We're here recording in person at the Engage Summit in Raleigh, North Carolina. Just super excited about this opportunity. And if you're following along, this is the second episode that I'm recording, and I feel like it's always the idea of like just for your keen listener, see how much my I'm sort of losing my voice over the course of like all the interviews here. But I'm really excited because through all the episodes that I'm going to do here that I planned, I really wanted to talk to some of the other creators on the network and get their institutional perspectives onto the show and just kind of help uplift what they're doing on their shows and everything. So we will start out, Maya, if you want to briefly introduce yourself, kind of your professional background, and then we'll talk more about your show and digital transformation, all sorts of stuff. But introduce yourself.
Well, thank you, Dustin, for having me on your podcast. It's my first time doing it in person, so that's very special because I feel like it's going to be a different type of energy, like being in person, and all the energy we have at the summit is so exciting. But my name is Demishkevich, and I've been in higher ed for over 15 years, working in a variety of different institutions and different roles. I started at a web marketing agency. I actually did search engine optimization back in the days when it just started. It was so exciting. And then pay-per-click and digital marketing. And then I transitioned to higher ed, where I worked for Nazareth College, and now it's Naz University as an associate director of marketing and communications. And I loved higher ed, but we moved to Baltimore from upstate New York. And that's when I got a different job working for an online university. It's one of the largest, the oldest Walden universities, serving over 40,000 adult students. So that was a very different experience, going from a traditional on-campus environment to a fully online where you don't actually see the students. So that was very different. And then I transitioned working for Carroll Community College, which is located in Westminster. And I've been there for almost 8 years, managing a marketing department of 7. And it has been a lot of fun, and I am enjoying it.
Yeah. And a couple of like kind of, I guess, similarities in our stories and backgrounds. Like one, I lived in Baltimore for a couple of years. My wife worked at the Maryland Institute College of Art. So that kind of like brought us into the city, and we loved it there. And it's like a great place. Go check it out if anybody's never been. And yeah, I think working in like, online education and everything like that has been a lot of my career up to this point. So it kind of holds like a special place in my heart, especially like, student support and, how do we kind of engage and connect with these students and everything. But I guess I don't know when exactly it factored in like timing wise, like what year and everything, but I feel like it's just such good experience because it's like, it is here to stay. Institutions are sort of grappling with kind of, how to orient their strategy in that space. So it's like, it feels like also like working at Walden, it's like, that's, a heck of a place to do it at, like a, fully online institution and everything where it's just like all that all the time. But yeah, I guess, we want to make sure that we kind of give emphasis and focus and celebration of, all the creators' shows to kind of give you an opportunity of talking about how the show came to be and sort of reflections on it and all that. So just tell us all about your podcast.
Well, my podcast is called The Hidden Gem. I don't know if you worked in a community college setting, but that's usually a name you hear. It's like, we are the hidden gem of such and such county. No one knows about us. So in a way, the goal of my podcast is for this name to become obsolete and for us to become seen and valued and appreciated. Because I do think community colleges are vital to the national economy of the United States, but we are so underutilized and underappreciated. So I believe we deserve a more prominent narrative. And recently in one of my episodes, I talked to Martha Praham from American Association of Community Colleges. And she said, if you think about all of the community colleges, which there is 1,000 of us in the United States, and you combine them, we are the largest educational system of higher education in the United States, serving 10 1.1 million students. So that's amazing. So we do deserve a more prominent narrative and funding, etc. So when I was thinking about starting this podcast, the premise behind it is that marketing communications can profoundly influence the future of community colleges. Because usually on the marketing side, there are two main challenges that we deal with. The first one is limited resources, staffing, funding, specialized skills that might be missing in our departments. And then the second challenge is for those departments to be under leveraged, under appreciated, and very often leaders at institutions don't quite know where marketing fits in and what impact we can make on the institution. So I even developed the framework I call the impact framework that shows that marketing has a potential to impact almost every aspect of a community college, from fundraising to enrollment to student success to retention, even financial aspects. So, if leveraged appropriately, marketing can really elevate community colleges. So, that's kind of the premise behind the podcast. And I do hope that it grows into this go to resource for sharing knowledge and gaining new perspectives and enabling leaders at community colleges to access new strategies and best practices. And for me personally, being a host of a podcast is a huge professional development opportunity. I learn so much from all of the guests I speak to, and I bring this knowledge to my institution so I can be a better professional and I can serve my community college more effectively. And then another thing that's very unique about community colleges is this inherent spirit of collaboration. Unlike other higher ed institutions, we are not competing with each other. You know, we each serve a local county, and if one institution succeeds, the whole system, the whole ecosystem succeeds. So it's kind of like the concept of rising tide rises all the boats. So that's the same idea. If we can make the knowledge, the experiences, and share them and elevate each other, I think that's kind of the goal of my podcast.
I think, yeah, like it's interesting what you were saying that like, because I feel like I'm pretty well plugged into like higher ed podcasts and everything. And the idea that like, I feel like there should be more community college focused ones. If it is just, yeah, that idea of like very sort of humble people or something, or it's not like in the same way that people who might work for other institutions are like looking for that competitive edge. Like you said, it's like there is just that opportunity and that desire for the space of just sort of the collaboration. So like kind of coming to it with a different energy, but sort of a similar result. Obviously people are talking about like, well, this is what worked for me. This is, sort of, kind of show and tell that, I love higher ed for is like, as many times we can have spaces for that is helpful. And podcasts, I think, are a good vehicle for that. But yeah, it's just kind of an interesting thing. Like you said, I think just like trying to bring renewed sense of sort of emphasis and focus and celebration of these hidden gems. And yeah, it's like that would be the idea. It's like I can like end the show and like nobody uses that term anymore. It's like that's when I know I've achieved the milestone there. But a big thing I'm asking everybody that I'm talking to here, and the idea that I'm sure this is, I guess, a through line. Like you're making space for these conversations. You're welcoming people, and I think like you're saying, like people can't get out of conferences all the time. I think podcast helps sort of like gird, people sort of like, I'm sure earnest desires like, well, I'd love to talk shop with people. I'd love to, have, these kind of conversations, like the things that would like happen at conferences and everything. But so like with your show, how is digital transformation showing up? Because I guess that's the idea of what I would imagine or think that a lot of your community college colleagues are sort of like thinking about and, trying to create their strategy around. So I guess if you want to speak to, what's coming up on the podcast and or what's coming up in your sort of day to day, but yeah, that's like for my show, what I try to ask a lot of people about. So I'm just curious, I guess, yeah, how sort of digital transformation showing up for you?
Yeah. So when I think about digital transformation, to me, it never stops, right? It's not like it happened and we forget about this. It just evolves. And now I think we're at a point where we're adding a second layer to the transformation that has been happening. And now we're in the era of AI and trying to figure out how does that integrate with what we have been doing and how we can use it to improve efficiency, effectiveness of our communications and our processes, etc. And when I think about community colleges, we are large institutions, and for a large organization it's really hard to stay nimble and to be able to adopt the latest and greatest technology. And we're almost like this large slow moving ship that needs maneuvering. And sometimes for us to even find a new technology or onboard a new vendor, it's a whole process. It's usually handled by committees. A lot of people have to be involved in the decision-making process. It takes time to review contracts. And sometimes by the time you actually onboard a vendor, start using the technology, it could be even obsolete, So it's a big challenge to be nimble and to move fast, because I feel like everything is changing so rapidly, and even more rapidly the last year. And it feels sometimes overwhelming. A lot of people are not ready to embrace the change. So it is, I think, is a big challenge for institutions. And for my particular institution, I mean, we're still trying to catch up with the latest and greatest technology, because there are so many systems, and those systems need to be talking to each other to ensure that student experience is smooth and frictionless. But it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort to make that happen. Sometimes a new technology comes in and it says, like, the promise behind new technology is usually it's going to make you faster, it's going to make you more efficient. And then you onboard this new technology and you realize, well, you need more people, because technology is not going to manage itself. You actually need people, trained people who are managing this technology. And then we go back to the issue of resources. Yes, we just spent money on a new CRM and we don't have money to hire someone to manage it. So I think a lot to juggle on the technology side. But at the same time, from a marketing perspective, and that's what I talk about on my podcast, I try to be on the cutting edge, and I try to be looking for the new ways to communicate, keeping up with the trends and see what's happening and how students do want to receive information. So most of the communications we do now are digital. Like even traditional media, if you think about it, like radio, it's primarily Spotify and Pandora and CTV, and even print is digital print now. So it is, this digital transformation for marketing has happened. And the next exciting thing is how we're going to leverage AI to help us be more effective and efficient. So that's where I am right now.
Yeah, and I guess it's interesting because what I'm hearing a lot is like, I mean, you kind of, I feel like covered a lot of ground, but like it's everything from like digital transformation is like, it's emotional, it's disruptive, it's sort of change, it's like just kind of reordering things and, just certainly like the way we do things. And then like, certainly trying not to have that sense of like playing catch up be like sort of overwhelming or daunting and all that. And that like, you have to make some hard choices. Like digital transformation is kind of making institutional leaders, make tough decisions of like, what are we going to do first? What are we going like, how are we going to prioritize things? How are we going to like, change the structure of our team to maybe say that like, okay, well, we are going to hire for somebody, but we can't do it yet. Or we have to like, I don't know, like there's just like all these variables where you might, just really have to change roles on your team and the structure and the size and hire for things that you've just like never had to hire for before of like AI or like CRM sort of skills and everything. But again, there's the emotional piece. And then, just the very like, if you're leading a team of people that like you have just a strong vision of like, well, this is what we're doing and this is why we're doing it. Cause like people are just going to, be trying to look for sort of the light to follow, of just being like, okay, we know what we're doing. We know why we're doing, we have a plan. We're being like, thoughtful about it. So I think that's interesting that, you weren't like, and that's what I hope for, of like having this be a very broad question is sort of like, kind of gut check, like digital transformation, what's happening, and all that is that like you took it in a different angle than what I was expecting. So I think that's like cool. That's just an idea of like, it's a lot of sort of like the cerebral part of it, like all that versus being like, oh, but like we're doing like this one particular thing. Like, when I talked with Shane for the other episode, he was talking about like updating the website and all that. It's just like, yes, that is digital transformation. It was great to explore that with him. And on one hand, it like, I think would have been fine if it was like everybody saying like the same answer, because it's like, oh my gosh, that's like that's it, that's what's happening.
I mean, that's why it's such a great question, because you can answer it in so many different ways, right, from your own perspective. And I do think with technology especially, it's really important to get people's buy-in and ask for input when selecting a new product or onboarding new technology, because they're more likely to embrace it once you actually install it or implement, because it does take time and it takes resources.
Definitely. And I think, that can be like the death knell of any sort of like digital transformation effort or whatever is like underestimating like all those sort of things of just the like change management and resource management and all that kind of stuff. So we're ending all these episodes on an optimistic note because I feel like it is just it's a wild time out here for many reasons in higher education. But like, what are you excited about in this upcoming academic year, or like with your podcast or anything else? But like, what's getting you excited? What are you optimistic about?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm excited about AI for obvious reasons. I have started integrating AI into our workflows, into our process to help improve operations, to save us time. And I'm so excited that it's going to save me time and I can really focus on creating more delightful experiences. And if you were listening to the keynote speaker today, Melina Powers, she talked a lot about delight. And when we think about the student recruitment funnel, the last stage of the funnel is actually delight. When students get to your college, that is your time to delight them, to create experiences that are memorable, that want to keep them and keep them enrolled. So that's what I'm very excited about, is leveraging AI to save myself and my team time to be more thoughtful about creating more memorable and delightful experiences, not only for our current students, but for students that are coming in to our college. Because I do feel that in the age of AI, those personal connections are more important than ever. So that's where my focus is going to be.
Yeah, I mean, it's time well spent, and I think taking it as sort of an opportunity, and I think just that terminology I think is just always like refreshing. That idea of like how you make sure that people are delighted, having just pleasant, enjoyable experiences with whatever way they're interacting with our institution, and I think it makes me think too the idea of even just like the faculty staff experience, just the idea of like existing there as an employee, as an administrator, or everything else. Like AI can do a lot of things, and I think that is a good sort of North Star to sort of have a very like clean fuel to like power your engines as you're going through all these digital transformation efforts. So we will leave it there. Thank you so much, Maya, for hanging out and sharing all that you did, and keep up the great work with the show. And thanks for folks checking out this episode, and for hopefully checking out the live stream of all the great content happening here at the Engage Summit. Hired Geek Podcast is a part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances you'll like all the other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing constantly, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better hired professional. Our shows help you find your next big idea and feature a selection of the industry's best as your host. Learn from people like Jamie Hunt, Seth Odell, Day Kibbolds, and Eddie Francis, as well as so many other of your favorite leaders in higher education. Enrollify is made possible by the support of Element 451, a leading AI-powered, all-in-one student engagement platform helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.